So now we are more familiar with the Publon Press editor. We have just covered the JavaScript object notation, so we can pick our way through this code as we like. Up here, we also have a title section, so we can change the title of the Publon as it's stored in the database. So this title is not going to appear in the Publon itself. That just helps us change the label in terms of the database entry. So we can change the title there, and then we see several buttons down here. So the first one is preview. So preview helps us to edit or review the changes that we've made to the code. So let's say we changed this title from chemical reaction engineering to nuclear reaction engineering. And then if we click on preview, then you see that updates here. And well, it in fact updates the whole Publon. And if we switch that back, so if I hit Control Z, then that changes the code here. And I can go ahead and click on preview to update, but there is also a keyboard shortcut. So Control Alt R. So that also switches back. So Control Alt R is the keyboard shortcut to refresh the preview of the Publon. And that's quite convenient. So as we pick our way through and make our edits here, just Control Alt R, we can just keep pressing Control Alt R and we'll see the Publon update on the right-hand side. Then this is simply changing the current view of the Publon. It doesn't save that Publon to the databases yet. So to save it, we can go ahead and click on Save down here. And so, for instance, let's just change the month there to August. And then, of course, we can preview that. So Control Alt R, so it's set to August there. And then we can click on Save. And so that's updated our Publon now. And if we go back to our list and we say load here, and if we reload this Publon, you can see it gives us that's August now. So you can save there. There is also a keyboard shortcut for save. So Control Alt S to save. So that's your saving. Then we see re-indent and unindent. So the indentation helps us keep this JSON code more readable. So if we unindent, that's going to remove all the indentation, and you can see the code is more compact like this. And of course, we also notice that our preview has disappeared. So that's just because when we make the code so compact and there are fewer spaces, then that tends to expand our text area, the text area, and that makes it harder for the preview to stay. So the preview has gone down here. So that's just a side effect, unintended. So that's if we unindent, and the utility of this is we might want a more compact, we might want to save this Publon, we might want to copy this out and save it in a text file or something like that. So unindenting gives us a more compact version of that. If we say reindent, then that will give us the indented version, and you can see the preview has moved back up here. There's more space there. So that's unindent, reindent. We can also clear all this code, and we'll use that more just now. And then if we click on launch here, it's going to launch this Publon to a new tab. And it's going to launch it to the view mode. So in the view mode, we aren't viewing the editor anymore. And so the launch and the view mode, that's intended for the consumers of your Publon. So not everybody is going to be editing Publons and creating Publons. I mean, I wish, but most of the people consuming your Publons are just there to read them and maybe interact with them. So if we click on launch, it's going to open up a new version of the page. And you can see now this is just a Publon view, and it's just showing the Publon. So your users or your consumers, they are not there to edit your Publon, so they don't have those options on this page. They could interact with this Publon if you have interactions like submitting answers to things like we see here. That all works still, but in terms of editing the Publon itself, they're not able to do that on this view page. And when it launches, let's reveal the address bar. When it launches, it will show you in the address bar, there's an address here. So the dash number, that's the index value that the Publon is stored in the database. And this is a little code. So your users can't just try and guess the number of your Publon. They also have to have this code to run your Publon. So if you want to, for example, distribute this Publon to others, this is the address to give to them. So you would remove this part where it's showing the current user that's logged in, right? So we don't want to give anyone our user ID and all of that, or the login token or anything like that. So we can delete that part. So what we want to give to our consumers or our users is the address which shows, basically this address code. So you can copy this URL and distribute that to your users. So for example, I send my students this address so they can view the notes or they can try out the examples and so on. Right, so that's what happens if we click on launch in our editor. So that's the launch button. Now, of course, the thought of writing these Publons and working through this code, it seems onerous, especially if we look at some of the bigger Publons. But what we have down here are some useful templates so that are intended to ease the process of creating Publons. So let's see that. Let's clear the Publon and let's refresh the view for that. So there's nothing. So let's just create a blank document. So if I double click on this blank doc, then you'll see a little code appear here. It is creating a page and an empty set of Publons. So let's just view that. So if you look at the preview, you've got a blank document here. So among our templates, we have a couple of different sections. So in terms of document layout, you can see a couple of different documents here, and we'll look at some examples. You also have some user interface components. The list is short here at the moment. We'll keep adding to this as we go. There are many user interface components that are available. We just have to make them available through the templates as well. And so among our user interfaces, we can use different user interface components here. And then there are some specific Publon types that are defined here as well. So we look at some examples as we go. But for right now, we can simply create a document. So let's look at this blank doc. So we can see that's just an empty space there. Let's look at something a bit more interesting, a LaTeX doc. So to load code into your editor, you'll want to double click on the desired element. So if we click on LaTeX doc, then you can see it's loaded up a bunch of code here. And if we preview this, remember Control-Alt-R, then it's given us an example of a LaTeX document. And I want to do this again. So let's just clear the code and let's load a blank doc again. So in this blank doc, you can see a couple of elements. Number one, let's indent it, right? So you can see there's some CSS code, so that helps style the page. And then you see the section here, Publons. So Publons are sub-Publons. So they are, if you like, child Publons. So you can insert Publons inside of other Publons. And when we click on or double click on LaTeX doc, it's going to insert at the cursor position the code for that. So in contrast to blank doc, which expects to be inserted into a blank code editor, in contrast to that, LaTeX doc is intended to insert into a list of Publons. So just remember here, plons there. And so when we double click, you can see it's inserted as LaTeX doc, and there are some sub entries to that. And again, let's re-indent that. So you can see under the list of plons, there's LaTeX doc, and then you've got plons inside of LaTeX doc. So you can have plons inside plons inside plons, right? So if we preview that, then we get that view. So we'll have a separate video on LaTeX and how to write the code and make equations and things like that. But that's a LaTeX doc. Let's just clear this again and create a new blank document. And then again, we position ourselves at plons. And then let's now look at a web article. So it's loaded up some code on our web article, re-indent that, and we can see the code here. So let's get used to reading this code. We can see under our plons, we've got a document title. So let's actually preview that, Control-Alt-R. And so we can see now we've got a document title here. We've got some smaller text, and then some text for the article and an image in here. So let's see how that appears in the code. So first up, the title, we can see we just style a text section with a larger font size, so 1.5 rems. So that's a larger document title. And so let's just change the title here, about tigers, for example. And then you can see here we have another part where we've got some text, so the date and author's name. And here we are using a smaller font, and but it's bold, right? So there's some styling and some text there. And again, we can update that, Control-Alt-R, so it's about tigers. And then we have another text section here where we've got the lorem ipsum text just as a placeholder. And so this is just standard text about our article, so that's there. Then we are adding an image here, and I'm using the Unsplash service. So they provide you with random images. Well, you can specify the subject here as well. So let's say instead of tigers, I wanted to see something about dogs. So dogs, and then we can maybe update the title as well, about dogs, and then Control-Alt-R. And it's just taking a couple seconds to load the dog. Yeah, if you don't like the image, you can actually use a little code here to, so we can just put some random thing there. So if we say Control-Alt-R, that gives us a different image. Okay, and then we've got another block of text down here. Okay, so that's how we can edit a simple web document. And something to notice is that in our list of plons, we don't have an array this time. We did see in one of the previous videos, we had an array or a list of plons. This time, we have this as an object with different attributes. And you can see here, the first one was title, the second one was auth, the third one was body one. And so these titles don't really mean anything. We can use any key. So we are just assigning arbitrary keys. But what's inside of that code block does matter. So where we want to specify the text, we have to use the script attribute name. And where we want to specify the styling, then we have to use the CSS attribute name. And you'll see in the CSS code, there's a double pipe here. So this is intended because we can use class names and we can use a direct style code. So if we, for example, added box shadow here, which is a class name, a styling class name, then that will apply that. And maybe we also want to apply some padding inside that box, so P0. And then we apply directly the actual styling code there then it's going to apply all of this. So this is a shorthand way. So if you know CSS, this is a nice shorthand way of writing out our styling code. So let's see what that does. So you can see we've now applied a box shadow around this. We've also added some padding. So now you can see it's moved in a bit. And then the font size, we know we are using a bigger font size there. So the point here was that this is one plon inside this list of plons. It's given this arbitrary name here, title, and it's got two attributes, script and CSS. And in this simple document, these are all just script CSS pairs, okay? And we'll be looking just now at more sophisticated types of documents. So let's in fact load up our blank document again, and let's stick in some LaTeX here. And so what we want to do in the next session is understand LaTeX. That will help us create equations and things like that for more technical documents.